Bonjour et bienvenue. This is Fabulously Delicious, the French food podcast, and today you're listening to a special episode in our The Story of series. In this series, we dive deep into the lives of remarkable French chefs from history, the pioneers, the innovators, the legends who shaped French cuisine and left an indelible mark on the culinary world. From their humble beginnings to their greatest achievements, personal triumphs, and lasting legacies, we uncover the fascinating stories behind the names that continue to inspire chefs and food lovers today. I'm your host, Andrew Pryor. Enchanté.
Enchanté.
I'm a former MasterChef contestant, now living my dream in France. I'm passionate about exploring French food, history, and culture. And through this series, I hope to bring these culinary icons to life and share their fabulous journeys with you. This episode of Fabulously Delicious, the French food podcast, explores the fascinating life and culinary legacy of a pioneering French chef whose career spanned from France and across the UK in the 19th century. From his early years in Montbrie to becoming a renowned chef at London's Reform Club. His innovations in both kitchen design and cuisine left a lasting impact. In this episode, we delve into his adventurous spirit, his influence on French and British cooking, and his compassion for the poor, highlighting how he used his skills to address social issues like the Irish potato famine. So pour yourself a glass of wine, break off a bit of baguette, get a slice of cheese, some delicious saucisson maybe, and settle in as we uncover the story of Alexis Soyer. Welcome to Fabulously Delicious. Alexis Benoît Soyer was born at 10 p.m. on Sunday, the 4th of February in 1810, at home on Rue Cornion in Montbrie, in the northeast of France. Alexis was one of 5 children, the youngest of all boys, to father Henri Rocher Soyer and his mother Marie-Madeleine Françoise Soyer, née Chamberlain. At the time of Alexis' birth, though, only 2 of his 4 siblings were alive, his oldest brother Philippe and also Louis. His brother Paul died when he was 3 years old, and René when he was 8 days old. Both died before Alexis was born. Montbrie, at the time of Alexis' birth, had a population of around 6,500 people. The area had a reputation for religious tolerance, and so was a good place for Protestants Emery and Marie, his parents, to settle with their family. One of the things you may know Montbrie for would be obviously Brie de Meaux, which is a variety of Brie cheese. There are 2 AOC designations for Brie de Meaux. Brie de Meaux fermier, which is made from milk from one single farmer, and Brie de Meaux laitier, which is made from milk from different producers. There's also a very well-known mustard from the area, and which has nothing to do with food, but interestingly, there's the world's largest museum about World War I located in Meaux. It's called Musée de la Grande Gueule de Pays de Meaux. At the age of 9, Alexis was sent by his parents to a Protestant ministry and local seminary, as they thought he would be perfect for the religious life. Alexis rebelled against this environment. At the age of 11, he is expelled for having sounded the tocsin in the middle of the night. There is something to point out here, though, about Alexis' upbringing, and that is that some historians say that this account of Alexis going to seminary is inaccurate, mainly because the seminary was Catholic and Alexis and his parents were Protestant. Another reason given for this inaccuracy was that Alexis' father, Emery, had died on Thursday, the 20th of August in 1818, when Alexis was just 8 years old. His mother remarried a year later, on Tuesday, the 22nd of June in 1819, to a farmer, Pierre-Nicolas Joseph Travet. All of this upheaval is perhaps the reason for Alexis leaving school and joining his brother. His eldest brother, Philippe, was a cook in Paris, and so Alexis, not coping in this scholastic environment, was sent to Paris to live with his brother in 1821. Philippe arranged an apprenticeship for Alexis at a restaurant that was run by his friend, Georges Rignon. This restaurant was located on Rue Vivienne, near the Bourse, which was the French Stock Exchange building at the time. Alexis left George's restaurant to work as the second chef at Maison 2, which was a large restaurant on Boulevard des Italiens. Within a year of working there, he was promoted to chef de cuisine, and he had 12 chefs working under him. And by the end of the 1820s, Alexis had left the restaurant and set up his own venture, providing grand and high-profile banquets for aristocratic French households. His career in 1830 was halted by the July Revolution in France. It's said that at the age of just 21, he was cooking at the French Foreign Ministry for a banquet given by the French Chief Minister. At the time of the revolution, when an armed mob broke in, unarmed but shaken, fearful for his association with the aristocracy, which now made him persona non grata and unemployable, his brother Philippe suggested that Alexis move to England. So Alexis moved to London to work in the kitchens of royalty and aristocracy. But he left behind a young lady, Adelaide Lamont, and her son, who was recently born and who was the son of Alexis, Jean-Alexis Lamont. Later in life, he would change his name to Soyer and drop the name Jean, and would then be known as Alexis Soyer, perhaps in honour of his father. Alexis' brother Philippe had been living and working in London for several years before Alexis came. There was a long tradition in England for the British aristocracy to hire French chefs for their households. The who's who of French chefs like Louis Estachund and Antoine Coren all worked for British aristocracy at the time. Philippe was the head chef of the Duke of Cambridge, the son of George III. The Duke's home, or mansion you'd call it, was at Cambridge House in Piccadilly. And in 1831, Philippe secured Alexis a junior post at the kitchens in Cambridge House. Bonjour, mes amis. Planning a trip to Paris, or maybe you're already strolling the charming streets of this incredible city. Either way, let me take your foodie experience to the next level. As someone who's eaten my way through Paris, I've turned my love for Parisian cuisine into a guide just for you. Say hello to 2025 edition of Paris, a fabulous food guide to the world's most delicious city. This isn't just any guide. It's packed with over 400 of my favourite recommended foodie spots. From hidden gems to icon must-visits. Think buttery croissants from the best boulangeries, silky chocolates from indulgent chocolate shops, creamy cheeses from top fromageries, and a whole lot more. This new edition is bigger and better than ever. It features more restaurants, cafes and wine bars, plus exciting new sections for vegan and vegetarian eating, dining with a view, and a reimagined food walking tour that will have you falling in love with Paris one bite at a time. So, are you ready to eat your way through Paris? Then get your copy now at edgepryorfabulously.com, where you can even get a signed and gift package version, or hop over to Amazon where it's available and you can get a Kindle version that you can carry anywhere. Happy eating, and let's make your time in Paris a fabulously delicious one. At Cambridge House, Alexis would move up in the rankings from post to post in the kitchen over the next 6 years. He then became the sous chef in the kitchens of the second Marquis of Waterford. Then he procured a position at Stafford House, now known as Lancaster House in London. Stafford House was the London residence of the first Duke of Sutherland, George Granville Leveson Gower. Stafford House was considered the grandest house in London. The year that Alexis started there, the Duke died and the house passed on to his son. George Jr.'s wife, Harriet, was a promoter of liberal causes and befriended Alexis and would become a friend and supporter of him for the rest of his life. His first job as a head chef was for the house of William Lloyd, a rich landowner. William Lloyd had a townhouse in Mayfair, but his main residence was at Aston Hall in Shropshire. Alexis worked for the Lloyd family for 3 years. Often the gentry of the area would try to poach him from Lloyd's, but had to be content with just borrowing him on important occasions. During this time at Lloyd's, he decided to have his portrait painted, like you do, by the artist Francois Simenon, a Belgian painter and teacher that was based in London. It's believed he wanted the portrait done to send to Adelaide Lamont in Paris, the mother of his firstborn child. But at Simenon's, Alexis met the artist's stepdaughter and pupil, Elizabeth Emma Jones, and they fell in love. Emma was the youngest person to have had a painting shown at the Royal Academy Summer Exhibition with a painting named Watercress Women. She did this at just the age of 10. This record lasted until 2010, when another slightly younger 10-year-old, Felix Chadwick-Kistad, did this with a painting titled Trees. Emma's stepfather was not happy about this relationship, citing Alexis as just a mere chef. But Emma and Alexis' romance flourished. Alexis left the Lloyds in 1836 to take over the kitchen of the first Marquis of Ailsa, Archibald Kennedy, at St Margaret's House near Twickenham. Kennedy also had a central London house at the Privy Garden in Whitehall. Kennedy was a gourmet and prominent Whig, which his friend and former boss Harriet Leveson Gower was also a member of. Kennedy was also a Freemason, and it is thought that he introduced Alexis to Freemasonry, of which he became a lifelong member. Kennedy took a very proactive approach to the cooking in his household and was considered a gourmand. He often would be found in the kitchen discussing with Alexis the menus in detail, and his closeness would become a friendship that, after Alexis moved on from his employ, continued. Attention, French foodies and lovers of all things ooh la la. If you're not following me at Andrew Pryor Fabulously on Instagram yet, you're missing the ultimate insider look at French food culture and life here in La Belle France. From cooking tips to charming French villages, it's your daily escape to the flavors and magic of this incredible country. Don't wait, follow now, and let's keep the joie de vivre alive in your feed. April 1837 would be quite a change in Alexis' personal life. Some sadness and some happiness. On Monday, the 3rd of April in 1837, Adelaide Lamont, his first love and mother of his firstborn child, died in Paris. And then on Wednesday, the 12th of April, Alexis and Emma Jones were married at St George's, Hanover Square. One of the witnesses for the nuptials was chef Louis Estage Ornon. Even though they married, Alexis was insistent that Emma continued her burgeoning artistic career and encouraged her to still exhibit and sell her paintings. Emma, in fact, painted a portrait of her mother-in-law called A Farmer's Wife. Also in 1837, Alexis was appointed the head chef of the recently founded Reform Club. The Reform Club is a private members club on the south side of Pall Mall in central London. It had an all-male membership, like most of the private members clubs, until 1981, when it became one of the first to allow female members. The club had been the home of progressive political ideas, but nowadays it has no political affiliations. Because the club moved to new premises, Alexis had the opportunity to design the kitchens and transform them. This was an opportunity of a lifetime for Alexis, as he was able to work with architect Charles Barry in the design of the kitchen quarters, stoves, and all the equipment. The kitchens he created at the Reform Club were the most talked about in the country, and even became a touristic attraction, with an article in the Morning Chronicle saying that the British Museum, Westminster Abbey, and other tourist attractions were outshone by Alexis' kitchens at the Reform Club. The kitchens used fuel like coal and charcoal, but it was the use of gas that was a major innovation at the time. Meat and game were kept in a larder that was fitted with slate tabletops and lead-lined ice drawers, which helped to keep the temperature cool and constant. Fish was kept fresh on a marble slab under a constant stream of iced water. The main kitchen had a large 12-sided table that at its center had a steam-heated metal cupboard that would keep dishes hot. The table had 4 central columns, which had small cupboards attached that had spices, salt, fresh herbs, breadcrumbs, bottled sauces, and all on hand conveniently for the chef and the sous chefs and cooks. Different for the times and a leader at the time, Alexis employed many women as junior chefs, which was another innovation in his kitchens. At the Reform Club, Alexis' best known dish was the lamb cutlets reform, or côtelette diagnon réformée, which has remained on the menu since 1840s and has been cooked by chefs like Auguste Escoffier, Victor Cesarani, Marc Hicks, and Prue Leaf even. The dish is fried breaded lamb cutlets served with a piquant reform sauce, and this recipe was originally published in 1846 and was more than 500 words long, which was a very complicated recipe for the time. On Thursday, the 28th of June in 1838, Queen Victoria had her coronation. The Reform Club put on a grand breakfast for 2,000 members and their guests. Alexis served déjeuner à la fourchette, which was a buffet featuring dishes like bouillon or œuf, a clear soup topped with a poached egg, brochettes of whitebait on skewers, galantine de volatile, which was boned and rolled chicken, jambon à la gelée, jellied ham, pâté de piliers, salad à la jardinière, garden salad, truffes or vin de champagne, balls of ham, veal and truffle cooked in champagne, all along with a selection of desserts. Other reports say that there was also pigeon on the menu, salmon, oysters, and lobsters served. Alexis' brother Philippe, whose son Philip was working for Alexis at the Reform Club, died sadly on Wednesday the 27th of March 1839. He left a wife and 5 children behind. His son Philip would end up being the head chef of King Christian IX of Denmark. In 1842, King Leopold I of the Belgians requested that Alexis come for a banquet. And whilst in Brussels, Alexis' wife Emma had a miscarriage and died. Alexis was distraught, and it's said he never fully recovered from his grief and the guilt of leaving her alone. He commissioned a memorial statue and then threw himself back into his work. Alexis would become a well-known author of cookbooks. These books were aimed at everyone from the chefs cooking in grand kitchens of aristocracy to the middle-class households and even the poorest of families. He strove through these books to improve the diet of its readers. He published recipes for inexpensive and nutritious food, as well as cheaper alternatives to things like bread. In 1844, Alexis saw famed Italian ballet dancer Fanny Cerrito perform in London at the Jules Perrot Ballet Ondine at Her Majesty's Theatre. Fanny was one of the world's leading prima ballerinas. He fell in love and began an amitié amoureuse, a loving friendship. In Fanny's honor, Alexis created a molded dessert that was topped with a miniature figure of the dancer herself, weightlessly poised on a spun sugar zigzag spiral. Fanny kept a letter that was sent from Alexis that said, "When the white star is up close, obeys spring zephyrs. With your beautiful eyes open, the wet fail to water the marguerite. Yes, the marguerite, flower of the fields." Unfortunately, though, Fanny's father disapproved of her relationship with Alexis. She rejected Alexis like a good Italian daughter at the time would do. On Friday, the 17th of May, 1844, in Paris, Alexis' brother Louis passed away. And then, just over a year later, on Sunday, the 29th of June in 1845, Alexis' mother Marie passed away in Paris as well. She'd been living there with Alexis' late brother. Escape to the heart of France with Vienne residency cooking experiences. Trade crowded tourist spots for the calm and charm of Montmorillon. Stay in our newly renovated 2-bedroom townhouse and enjoy the all-day private cooking class with me here in my home kitchen. Explore local markets, uncover hidden gems, and savor true French hospitality. Whether you're a solo, a couple, or with friends, these private residencies offer a perfect blend of relaxation, adventure, and culinary magic. Did I also say they're very delicious? Available from May to October, visit andrewpryorfabulously.com for more details and bookings. Your French escape awaits. During the Irish potato famine in 1845, Alexis was among those pushing for action from the British government to alleviate the starvation. He would publish recipes in the Times newspaper for cheap, nutritious soups that could be made in large quantities and feed the hungry. With a lack of support from the British government at the time, he decided to put his theories and recipes into practice, and he set up a soup kitchen in Spitalfields in the East End of London, where impoverished silk weavers worked. This kitchen was a success, and under pressure from the public, the Parliament passed an act authorising the establishment of Alexis soup kitchens in Ireland. At the government's request, Alexis sought leave from the Reform Club Committee in 1847 to go to Dublin. With their blessing, he left and set up a kitchen capable of feeding 1,000 people an hour. Many people came out against a soup or liquid diet that was created by Alexis. A rival club, the Athenian Club's members that were medicos, said that all physicians and physiologists know that the digestive organs are incapable of simulating sufficient nutrition from a liquid diet. The Queen's doctor, Sir Henry Marsh, also said that he thought a liquid diet would be adequate for children and some adults, but for labourers, they needed solid food. So Alexis responded by providing solid food such as pea panda, which was said to be 1/4 the price of bread, but 5 times as nutritious. Whilst in Ireland, Alexis wrote Soyer's Charitable Cookery, or The Poor Man's Regenerator. He donated part of the proceeds of this book to charity. Probably one of Alexis' most elaborate banquets at the Reform Club was given in the honour of the visiting Ibrahim Pasha of Egypt. In July 1846, the banquet consisted of 4 kinds of soups, 4 fish dishes, salmon, trout, turbot and whiting, 13 different entrees including spring chicken, mutton cutlets, hot quail terrine, young hare and vol au vents that had mackerel roe in them. And for the mains, there was 8 roasts of meats like capon, duck, turkey and saddle of mutton. This was then followed by a course of savoury and sweet dishes, which consisted of curried lobster, chicken salad, crisp almond and cherry cakes, apricot praline tarts, and crystallised pineapple jellies. The climax for this whole dinner was a dessert created by Alexis called La Crème d'Égypte à l'Ibrahim, which was a huge pyramid of meringue and cake filled with pineapple cream and topped with a portrait of the guest of honour's father, Muhammad Ali Pasha. Also that year, in 1846, if he wasn't busy enough organising such a banquet, he published the Gastronomic Regenerator, an illustrated book that showed a simplified and entirely new system of cookery with nearly 2,000 practical recipes in it. So simple, but vast, in other words, this book was over 700 pages and had a profound effect on the cooking and eating habits of several generations of Britons, according to historian Eric Quayle. The Times reported that the book had taken Alexis 10 months to prepare, and that during this time that he wrote the book, Alexis had furnished 25,000 dinners, 38 banquets, comprised of more than 70,000 dishes, all while organising 60 employees at the club and received visits from 15,000 or more strangers in his kitchens. Bonjour, fabulous listeners. Are you part of the Fabulously Delicious Substack newsletter community yet? If not, you're truly missing out. Whether you're a French food lover or a Francophile, or simply curious about life in France, my newsletter is your backstage pass to all things fabulous. By signing up, you'll unlock exclusive stories and behind-the-scenes insights, special offers just for my cherished community, delicious, inspiring content about French cuisine and culture, and the best part, you can choose a free subscription or an upgrade to a paid one for even more fabulous perks. So why wait? Click on the link in the show notes or visit andrewpryorfabulously.com to join today. Let's explore the delicious world of French food and life here in France together. Writing continued to be a passion, and in 1849, Alexis wrote The Modern Housewife, which was for the middle-class readers. It was written in the form of letters between two housewives, and many modern historians have used this as an insight into domestic life at the time. Although really, a book written by a man to give insight into the life of the middle class, pretending to be two women talking to each other, and that man is used to cooking meals for the who's who. Not so sure about that, historians. In 1850, Alexis left the Reform Club. He was invited to tender for the catering at the Grand Exhibition that was planned in 1851. He found the proposal too restrictive and instead took a lease on Gore House in Kensington, opposite the site of the exhibition. He took the lease to create the Gastronomic Symposium of all nations. This was not just going to be a restaurant, but also an entertainment space, with the gardens filled with fountains, statues, and replicas of the seven wonders of the world, like you do. There was fireworks, music, and dancing. And despite being well attended by the public, it would seem that Alexis was, well, not the best businessman, and he aimed the restaurant really at the wrong crowd. The clients created so much noise and drunkenness that the local magistrate withdrew Alexis' license, forcing him to close and lose more than £7,000, which is around £1.2 million in today's money. Alexis was contacted at the time by Jean-Alexis Lemang, his son, from his first love, Adelaide. Jean informed Alexis that his mum had died in 1836, and that only recently had he learned who his father was. They met in London, and Alexis acknowledged Jean as his son and heir, but they both agreed not to publicise this relationship. When the symposium closed, Alexis undertook another public assignment for no money and developed supplies of canned meat for the Royal Navy. The Admiralty accepted his offer to look at their food rations, and he found that the supplier was using meat that was unfit for human consumption, and that the methods of canning were inadequate, which allowed even good meat to decompose within the tin. He recommended smaller cans be used, and that the meat should be cooked all the way through. And these recommendations were adopted by the Navy despite their concerns about the cost. Book writing continued at this time, and Alexis wrote another book, The Pantrufian History of Food and Its Preparation. This was published in 1853 and was a completely different style from his previous books. This one was entirely based on a French manuscript that he had acquired from another author. Alexis would remove some of the drier aspects of the book and replace with content that he deemed more relevant and popular. But unfortunately, this book didn't really sell well. And this was even despite the fact that Alexis had not written the original manuscript, was never told to the public at the time. He followed this book with A Shilling Cookery for the People in 1854 that was written by himself and aimed at the working class. He had 37 soup recipes in this book, as well as recipes for boiling and roasting and fish cookery. It also taught how to cook steaks and rump steaks, meat puddings and pies, general cooking of vegetables, sweet pies and puddings. The Bell's Weekly Messenger, reviewing the book, said, "Where is the housewife who will be satisfied without a copy of this book?" The book sold more than 110,000 copies within 4 months, and the recipes, like his version for Irish stew, is still used today. During the Crimean War in 1855, the British government was under pressure as its soldiers were rife with disease and malnourishment due to inadequate food. So at the request of the British government, Alexis was sent to Crimea, where he worked with none other than famed nurse Florence Nightingale to improve the conditions of the troops there. He made sure that all the regiments and parts of the army had nominated cooks, and then he gave them useful recipes as well as the means to cook food properly, whilst in the field of battle. Of particular note was his invention of the Soyer stove. The stove was so successful it was used for more than a century. The Soyer stove was a compact cooker that food could be prepared at the table for. This was a development of earlier devices he had developed, and even today a version similar is used in many restaurants. Alexis produced many other kitchen gadgets that would end up being the frontrunners for some of the kitchen gadgets that we know and love today. He produced poultry scissors, a portable table cooker, and even a gas-fired roaster that could roast a whole ox. He also produced and sold many sauces and relishes, but Alexis never patented his inventions and so made very little money from them. In May 1857, Alexis returned to London and published a culinary campaign which recounted his experiences in the war in Crimea, as well as his reform of the army catering. It included a section of recipes for military and navy cooking, like the dishes of salt meat for 50 men, salt pork and mashed peas for 100 men, and pot au feu, camp fashion. Alexis, after the war, lectured at the United Service Institution on cooking for the Army and Navy. He was also asked to design the new kitchens for the Wellington Barracks. During the war, Alexis became seriously ill with dysentery and Crimea fever, which was a form of brucellosis. He would never fully recover from this. It's reported that he ignored the doctor's advice to rest and to give up alcohol, of which he was a sound devotee. He was unable to attend the opening of the newly designed Wellington Barracks kitchens due to his health. Sadly, on Thursday, the 5th of August, 1858 at 9:40 p.m, a year after he returned to London from the war, at the age of just 48, Alexis died of a stroke. He died at his home in St John's Wood and was buried at Kensal Green Cemetery under the elaborate memorial that he had created and erected for his wife, who had been interned there 16 years earlier. The Illustrated London News commented in his obituary, "There can be no doubt that the seeds of this malady were sown in the Crimea, as ever since he has been ailing, and an overtaxed mind has brought to the grave a man whom the world could ill afford to lose." Now, there are many different theories and stories about the life of Alexis Soyer, and some say many of the things mentioned here are true, and some say they aren't. There are historians that have come up with completely different stories about Alexis' life. One story that I will include here, though, that many don't believe is that the year before his death, in secret, Alexis married his second love, the ballet dancer Fanny Cerruti, and that a bouquet of flowers was laid at his grave after the ceremony from Madame Soyer, who was supposed to be Fanny. This was reported in the Morning Chronicle on the 12th of August. When his will was read, the mysteries continued. His son was not mentioned, despite being told that he would be a benefactor. Instead, money was left to his niece and his housekeeper, Sophia Cook, who was also one of the executors of the will. But because of this will, many believe that the marriage to Fanny didn't take place. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the fabulous supporters of Fabulously Delicious through my Substack newsletter. Thanks so much to William B, Judith W, Elaine W, Jane T, Betsy O, and Rosalind C for your support. If you'd like more fabulous content and like to support the podcast at the same time, then head over to my Substack newsletter via the link in the show notes of this episode. Alexis Soyer was quoted as saying, "It matters not how simple the food, a chop, a steak, or a plain boiled or roasted joint, but let it be of good quality and properly cooked, and everybody who partakes of it will enjoy." Fabulously Delicious is a part of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Join us as we explore the delicious world of French cuisine and culture alongside a fantastic lineup of podcasts. Stay tuned for more fabulous content and delightful conversations. And that's it for another episode of Fabulously Delicious and our Story of series. What did you think of the life and legacy of Alexis Soyer? Did you discover something new or gain a deeper appreciation for his contribution to French food? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Slide into my DMs at Andrew Pryor Fabulously on Instagram or send me an email at contact@andrewpryorfabulously.com. Let's chat about Alexis Soyer, his recipes, or anything else that you found fascinating in today's episode. If you enjoyed this journey through the past, then please take a moment to rate and review the podcast on your favorite platform. Your feedback not only means the world to me, but it also helps more foodies and French cuisine lovers discover Fabulously Delicious. Why not share the episode with your fellow foodies or anybody who adores French cuisine and its history? Your support keeps these stories alive and celebrated. Thank you so much for joining me as we honor the chefs who have made French food what it is today. Remember, my motto is, whatever you do it fabulously. Merci beaucoup, and as always, bon app. Until next time, au revoir.